Hello everyone. Today we have yet another swatching video with yet more paints sent by a very kind subscriber, so thank you very much for that. This time we're going to be swatching some Schmincke Horadam watercolors. I already had some Schmincke paints and I really enjoy using them, but let's see how I feel after swatching out an expanded collection. Okay, so first up we have Lemon Yellow, which is PY3. Now, this is a pigment I've used quite often, but I'm not so sure about the light fastness, so I'd probably pick a different pigment for my Lemon Yellow. Next up is Transparent Orange, which is PO71. I always love painting out this colour. It's really beautiful. It actually makes me feel like I want to use oranges more in my palette. Next we have Cadmium Red Light, which is PR108. Oh, sorry I didn't write the pigment numbers on the sheet of paper. Yeah, I completely forgot and just started swatching. So this one's very vibrant and yeah, it's quite opaque as it should be. Now we have Permanent Carmine, which is PV19. Again, it's a very beautiful paint. The Schmincke watercolors disperse really nicely on the wet paper. They're just so nice to paint out. Next is Quinacridone Magenta, which is PR202. I've never used this pigment before, but it looks pretty good to me. Doesn't seem to be quite as bright as a PR122 Magenta, but it's very nice all the same. Next we have Potter's Pink, PR233. So up until very recently when I swatched out my Winsor & Newton paints, I'd never used this pigment. Of course, I'd heard many people talk about how much they loved it, but for me, I never thought I'd have any use for it. And actually, I still don't think I have much of a use for it, but I do love seeing the beautiful granulation. I think this one might be even nicer than the Winsor & Newton version. Next is Perylene Violet, PV29. This is another pigment I've never used before. Okay, it's a very intense red violet when it's first painted out, but I think it has quite a large drying shift, so it will be much duller once it's dry. Next is Manganese Violet, PV16. It has some nice granulation going on in this one. Yeah, it's a good violet, but yeah, it's not something I'd use in my palette, I don't think. Now we have Cobalt Violet Hue, which is PV62. Yeah, this is a very delicate purple violet. Yeah, granulation looks great, but again, I don't think I'd use it in my palette. Right, now onto the blues with French Ultramarine, PB29. I've had this paint a while now, and yeah, I really do like it. I mean, the granulation is just so beautiful. Sometimes probably too much granulation, to be honest, so maybe I'd need a normal ultramarine blue. Next is Ultramarine Finest, which is also PB29. Yeah, it's another good ultramarine. This time it has less granulation. It's not quite as red leaning either. Yeah, I like this one too. Now we have Cobalt Blue Deep, which is PB74. I wasn't too sure about the pigment on this one. I'd found kind of conflicting information. Some places saying it's a mix of PB74 and PB28, and others saying it's single pigment PB74. So if anyone has any information about which is right, please let me know in the comments. Next is Prussian Blue PB27. Not a colour I really use in my palette, but it is a nice quality paint. Right, now onto the greens with Permanent Green Olive. Now this one's a mixture of PO62, which is benzimidazolone orange, and PG7, which is phthalo green blue shade. I find the two Schmincke olive greens that I have to be very strange. To me, they're not, well, to me both of them are very nice and useful greens, I think, but neither of them look anything like an olive green to me. I think they do have another olive green, which I think is an olive green yellow shade maybe, which does look more like a real olive green. Okay, next up is Cobalt Green Dark, PG26. Cobalt greens really don't do it for me. I had the Rembrandt Cobalt Green in the past and I didn't like that one either. One good thing about this one is that it does re-wet very easily from the pan. Next we have Olive Green. This is made up from PB15 and PG8. As I said when swatching out the permanent olive green, this looks nothing like an olive green to me. I do like the colour a lot though. I think it could be pretty useful. Up next is Rutile Yellow, PY53. Now I swatched this pigment out in my Da Vinci video as Nickel Titanate Yellow. I'd say this Schmincke version is a lot more pigmented and it's also very opaque. Next we have Titanium Gold Ochre, which is PBR24. So yet another new pigment for me. It's a beautiful golden yellow, but it is very opaque when you paint it out. I can't quite decide if I like it or not. Next we have Yellow Ochre, which is PY42. I do quite like this Yellow Ochre actually. Some people have told me that it's not very nice. It's not as bright as some other brands, but I quite like that actually. Now we have Spinel Brown, PY119. Okay, yet another completely new pigment to me. Never used this before. It's a very nice colour. I'm just not sure what I'd use it for. Yeah, it is very opaque and kind of makes me think of what you might get if you mixed a burnt sienna with a white or something like that. Okay, so now I have a bit of a confession to make here. I carried on swatching out the final third of this chart, but unfortunately I forgot to press record on the camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swatch these final 10 out on a different sheet of paper and then come back to this one once I've finished. So please excuse the strange lighting. Okay, so here's the final 10, starting with Gold Brown, PY65 and PBR41. PBR41 is yet another new pigment to me. It's a lovely colour, but I don't see why I'd pick this over a PO48 or PBR7 or PR101. Next we have Transparent Sienna, which is PR101. Yeah, I think this one looks great. I'm starting to like PR101 Siennas more and more. I used to just be all about the PBR7, but yeah, that's starting to change, I think. Next we have Burnt Sienna, PR101 and PBK9. This Burnt Sienna is a bit red for my taste, really. And I'm not quite sure why they decided to put black in it. I think I'd choose the Transparent Sienna if I had to pick one of the last two. Next is Mahogany Brown, PBR33. Of course, this is yet another new pigment to me. Wow, this one's really interesting. Yeah, there's lots of granulation going on here. Now we have Indian Red, PR101 and PR206. This is actually quite a delicate Indian red. Doesn't seem as opaque or intense as some other brands. Yeah, the granulation looks really nice in this one though. Next we have Burnt Umber, PBR7. Yeah, this is a really good burnt umber, I think. Yeah, it granulates quite beautifully as well. Next up is Sepia Brown. This is a 3-pigment mix of PB151, PBR7 and PBK9. Not a paint I see myself using all that much, but I think I prefer this Schmincke sepia to sepias from other brands. Now on to Neutral Tint, which is another 3-pigment mix. It's made of PR122, PB60 and PBK7. I can't say I'm a huge fan of this paint. Yeah, it has that really red undertone going on. It's a bit of a strange one to me. Next we have Payne's Grey Bluish, which is PBK6, PB156 and PB152. I've been wanting to try this one for quite some time, and it doesn't disappoint. It's definitely my kind of Payne's Grey, nice and blue. And finally we have plain old Payne's Grey. This is made from PR101, PB29 and PBK7. This just looks like a black to me, really. I much prefer the bluish Payne's Grey to this one. Okay, so we'll switch back to the other sheet of paper. And this is them all in daylight when completely dry. Wow, I was actually pretty blown away by these Schmincke paints. I mean, all of them were just so nice to paint out. They're, really smooth. Even the colours I wasn't so keen on were just, really nice to paint out. I definitely think I'm drawn more to the soft European style of watercolours. Similar to the Winsor & Newton. I mean, they're not as flashy and in your face as some other brands. It's tough to choose which I like more between these and the Winsor & Newton. Both were equally nice to paint out. And of course, they're both equally as expensive. Schmincke does make some strange pigment choices in a few of their paints, but I think they've got a wide enough range to make, to make a really great palette of colours. Yeah, I would definitely highly recommend Schmincke Horadam watercolours to anyone who has the budget for them. So what do you think? Are you a fan of Schmincke Horadam watercolours? Is there anything you particularly like or dislike about them? Let me know in the comments. And thank you all for watching. And an extra special thank you again to the kind subscriber who sent me these paints. I'll talk to you in the next video. Bye bye.